The more I dig into the Black American untold history, the more I find more similarities between the United States and the Israeli settler colony. Specifically, that the systematic violence that was committed against the Black Americans was also typically similar to the violence that the Palestinians, the indigenous people of the Palestinian land, were treated by the militias of the Israeli settler colony. And I find some significant events in history that will lead you to think that maybe all of the injustice that happens in history, it ends up being repeated because it could bring a lot of benefits to the people who committed it, and because people in general, even the good people, did not pay attention to what happened in history. And this is one of the main things that the educational systems do. It makes some stories unimportant or maybe even not told, and it reforms and changes and rewrites the history to create students who are unaware of their own history, who are unaware of what happened in the past, and who had little knowledge of realities and of who's good and who's bad and what's right and what's wrong, and who wouldn't be able to identify injustices because they did not look at it, who will need loads of efforts to realize the injustice and look in the eyes of the bad people and tell them that they are bad. So I wanted to start talking about the Central Park, the famous park that is promoted to be the exile for New Yorkers from the busy life and busy city. It was once Seneca Village, and Seneca Village was a thriving community. It was a majority of Black community and Irish immigrants. And if you don't know, almost all of the Black people who were brought to the United States, they were brought forcibly from Africa. The British colonizers wanted to create the United States after ethnically cleansing the indigenous population and letting the indigenous people be like a minority community. And even this minority were forced to not speak their language, to not exercise any religious rituals, to forget about their roots and start acting like white Europeans and to fit into the American society. And also the Irish community, the Irish immigrants who were brought there, they were forced to exile by the British colonizers because of the starvation, because of the systematic violence. When Ireland was colonized, millions were forced to flee, whether to Latin America or to the US, to build the country, to become the new population that dominate the country. I've always been wondering, why did the United States brought these Black communities from their home countries, from Africa, forced them to speak English, to forget about their mother tongues, to not exercise any religious rituals, and to fit into the American society that was designed to be like you see right now. And also to build a systematic racism that's always working on oppressing the Black communities. So America and Israel has a lot of similarities. They were both settler colonies and they are both built on racism, but moreover, Israel is built on apartheid. America is built on racism against minorities, against Black communities, and Israel is built on apartheid that oppresses the indigenous people. Now, what I needed to say about the Central Park and the Seneca Village was thriving. They were thriving on their own without the help of the government, without the help of the authorities around them. They built schools, churches, houses, helped each other, built a strong sense of community, of helping each other, providing services for each other, like businesses. But then they were somehow a proof that the people could actually build a good society and could build a thriving and self-sufficient communities without the help of the powerful governments and the powerful poles. And for that comes the decision of building the Central Park in the same place of the Seneca Village, in the same place of homes and houses and schools and churches that were home to thousands of people. In 1857, all of these villagers were forced to leave. Forced displacement happened, home demolition started. On these demolished homes, Central Park was built. A park was built instead of places where people lived happily, societies were thriving, children played. It was all demolished, it was all gone to build a green place that no one could live there, that is just for walking, and that doesn't even feed people with just green trees with no actual food to the people. And it was also promoted to be like the face of New York, that many tourists went there to see this park without knowing that it was built on the sadness and on the grief and on the loss of communities that were living there and they were forced to leave. My second story is the Black Wall Street. The Black Wall Street was in the Greenwood district, Tulsa, Oklahoma. It was a prosperous Black community, thriving also on their own, and it was a self-sufficient community. But moreover, it was a thriving place for businesses and Black entrepreneurs. Black people before the Black Wall Street, they were always working under white majority. There was like little to no Black entrepreneurs. They were always forced to work for other people. But when this community was created, loads of Black people started having the courage to start their own businesses, to thrive on their own, to let their talents lead them, and to start actually living normally. And like, look, this was a very courageous step from the Black communities. Imagine, like, being white, you always have this privilege to do your business, to have people work for you. But these people had to fight for everything. And I am talking in the United States, that's always promoted in all of their films to be the country of freedom, the country of possibilities, that you could achieve anything. But deep down, it's built on racism, it's built on rejecting some communities and favoring other white communities. In this district, they also had their schools, their barbers. They were self-sufficient. They made their own food. They made everything. They exchanged services. They even had their own newspaper. And this is why it was named the Black Wall Street. Their own newspaper was telling their own struggles, was reporting the real struggle of being Black in the USA. And thus, it was also another proof that communities can thrive without the help of the government, without the help of the powerful people. If you just leave these communities alone, if you leave the Black people alone, they can thrive on their own. If you don't try to manipulate their youth, if you don't try to push them into drugs, if you don't try to play the dirty games, they could thrive on their own. And this is one of the very good examples of communities building their own villages, being self-sufficient on their own. And after a while, when people started hearing about this Black Wall Street, when oppressed communities started having hope in the future, started having hope in having a better life, in leading their own life, in starting to work with their own communities, this was really hated by the white majority imperialist people and the majority of the American societies. News started reporting about this village. They were telling stories that are untrue about those people. They were saying they are dangerous people. They are going to attack you. They are trying to have power over you, even though this community was just trying to survive the racism, the systematic racism. They were trying to survive on their own. They were trying to run from the system that hates them. After the prolonged propaganda against this village, a white mob attacked the village. They burned the houses, they attacked the people, they killed hundreds and left thousands homeless. They looted the village, they took everything, they stole money, they stole the belongings of people, and they killed men, women, and children ruthlessly. Survivors were denied justice and were never compensated. They were never given back their belongings. Their dreams were stolen. Their belongings were stolen. Their homes was demolished by a mob that was allowed to do that by the American government, by the system that is always and will always remain racist. And those two stories reminded me of Gaza. Gaza was the only escape, the only exile of many Palestinians who were forced to flee after the Israeli militias started attacking Palestinian villages, started killing thousands of people, and forcing the rest to flee and to exile to neighboring countries, or they were left to go to Gaza. And this is the story that I want to speak about. In the Nakba in 1948, Israeli militias committed dozens of massacres. They killed around 15,000 people, among them children. They always slaughter men, women, and children. And they always slaughter villagers who have no weapons, no way to defend themselves. And one of the massacres was the Deir Yassin massacre. You can find loads of documentaries about this specific massacre. when an Israeli gang slaughtered around 107 Palestinian people, among them children. They were tied to trees and burned alive. Unimaginable atrocities committed against these people. And always the survivors were prohibited to speak or to report about any of the atrocities that the Israeli militias commit. And the Deir Yassin massacre happened even though that the villagers signed a non-aggression agreement with the Haganah, which is the pre-Israeli settler colony militia that was actually preparing for the creation of the settler colony state by eliminating as much as they can of the Palestinian people and replacing them with white Europeans disguised in the Jewish minority that was Holocausted. They were brought there and they were told that this is their promised homeland when the real people, owners of this homeland, were slaughtered, tortured, and killed in unimaginable ways. They faced unimaginable pain. Nevertheless, that the villagers signed this agreement, the Haganah militia broke this agreement. And it's like the history always reveals that Israel never respects an agreement they make. They always lie. They always say we agree about something. They even said to the Palestinians who were forced to flee their homes, they told them you can go to Gaza. We're going to let you live there. And now they came to Gaza because the greed of the colonizers never stops, even though they had loads of villages that they can live normally in, but they chose to even take Gaza. After the Nakba, the rest of Palestinians who were forced to flee to other villages, among them Gaza. Gaza was the exile for the displaced Palestinians. It was the only hope remaining for them. Their homes were stolen, their farms were taken forcibly, and they lost their children, their families, and they had an only hope to create life again in Gaza, and they went there. People grew their own food in Gaza. They thrived together, but they were still bombed every year because Israel bombed Gaza every now and then. They've bombed it in 2009, 2013, 2023, till now. It was an endless bombing. And it's also another example that if you leave people alone, they could create life anywhere. But Israelis did not want to see that. They did not want to see the indigenous people, the Palestinian people, showing how capable they are to live on their own, how capable they are of creating life, of being self-sufficient. All of these years they were besieged. They were not allowed to have trades with other countries. They were not allowed to bring things from the outside world. They were always forced to have their own things from their own land, and they created life in their own land. Imagine this community that did not have an access to many things, did not have the ability to trade with other countries. They were facing the tyranny without even telling the people about their pain. A lot of Palestinian youth were taken every year hostage into Israeli prisons. And the Israeli prisons weren't like this thing that protect the national security. It was to let fear reside in the Palestinian communities, to let them know that your oppressor is still there, to let them always have shaky hopes, to always be afraid of the future. This was the systematic psychological abuse that Israel exercised on the Palestinian people. Until the genocide started in 2023 and is still going on, hundreds of thousands of people were slaughtered and killed, and among them, almost 400,000 children. Children that, many of them under 5, children, even infants who did not learn to walk, did not learn to speak, and many of them were sniped by the Israeli drones. Babies were sniped. They were held by their mothers, meaning that the IDF soldiers who were like spying on the Palestinians, they saw babies and decided to snipe them. It's really, really sad. It's really, really terrifying. It lets you think that you cannot trust anyone. You cannot even trust your shadow in the nowadays imperialist systems. They could do anything. They could do all unethical things and then find ways to rebrand it. Let people sympathize with it, even though there's nothing to sympathize with people who kill babies. Literally babies. And any religion that tells you to kill people is not a right religion. No God needs your sacrifices. No God needs you to do anything for them. Imagine saying that you have a religion and that you fear God, and then you go and kill the children of God, the babies. If this is not dystopian, this is the darkest reality we live in. In all of these stories, and all these people had a common thing. They were fighting a cruel imperialist system with bare hands. They had nothing but their love and their communities, and they built life through their beliefs, through hope. They were the example of non authoritarian, thriving communities. Yet the greed of the colonizers did not allow these communities to exist. Because again, all of these imperialist, colonialist societies, they are all under capitalist systems. And if you just feel like this is a difficult term to understand, capitalism is the system that your government, my government, many governments in the West and in past colonized countries are applying. The capitalist system prefers the material gains even on the life of people, prefer the money, the material gains, even if it destroys the environment, prefers the material gains, even if it means you kill people. And that's the example. Black communities were killed and forcibly displaced to build parks. Loads of communities were destroyed because they were just self sufficient and they were giving hope to other people to free themselves. Communities like the Gaza community and the Gaza city and what's happening in Gaza, all of them were just attacked because they survived the imperialist system, because they survived Israel and its militias for years. Even they were bombed every now and then, even they were besieged. They were the hope of many people that you could survive, that you could fight for your existence. And Israel did not want this. And a lot of the colonialist powers, the imperialist powers, did not want to give this example to people, did not want the people to free themselves and to have hope in the future. This is my episode for today. I hope you learned something from it. And if you liked it, don't forget to subscribe and like my video. And thank you for watching. See you next time.